Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and I do apologize for not making more videos recently. I've been very busy and just cleaned out the garage, getting the house all ready for the baby soon to be incarnated here, and basically I just thought I'd check in with everybody. Been thinking about a lot of things, listened to a lot of things, the world is changing, my brothers, and it's a good thing. But what's ironic about change moving forward into the future is that time doesn't move in a straight arrow, right? It circles around, right? It's not even quite a circle, it's a spiral, right? Each cycle is qualitatively different than the last. Been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and God knows there's a lot of videos on YouTube with Jordan Peterson talking to listen to, right? It seems to be a mass cultural phenomenon now that people, having identified the mania of the left, now are kind of coming around and understanding a rationalist, non-dogmatic, non-necessarily theological view of conservatism, and or at least the foundational elements and morals of Western civilization. Right? Got Old Glory in the shot again today. The whole thing with Tommy Robinson happened. It's absolutely bizarre. So, in the unending quest for tolerance, right? And Europe takes in all these refugees from the Middle East, and that itself is a consequence of the, destructive wars in the Middle East that NATO and the Western powers have, come to bear, right? But setting aside that whole, cluster, right? They come up, they're very, tribal, hyper masculine, right? Compared to the for a large part cucked Brits, right, and Germans and Europeans and whatnot. And so there's whole rape gangs, right? And because they're afraid, because the police are afraid, and the government of Germany and Britain, basically, they're afraid of being called racist or intolerant. They just basically allow these mass crimes to happen, right? Gang rapes and murders and all this stuff. They won't even mention in the paper that they're a Muslim or an Arab perpetrator. They just say it was a youth, right? And it's crazy because Tommy Robinson's was reporting on one of these trials, right? It was a trial going on about certain individuals, a grooming gang, right? They're basically, allegedly, these violent, pedophile, rapist Muslim immigrants, right? And that's, it's not very politically correct to say it that way, but that's what the truth is. It's not me saying all Muslims are pedophile rapists. It's not me saying that all the refugees who come into Europe are pedophile rapists, but the fact seems to be inescapable that there are some among the refugees who have come into Europe who are Muslim and Arab, and they also happen to be pedophile rapists. And Tommy Robinson's reporting on this outside the courthouse where it's taken place, and he gets arrested, right? And he gets thrown in jail for 13 months. I guess he had a suspended sentence for, it was either, I think it was 3 months, maybe it was 10 months. And then basically they arrested him for breaking his, parole or whatever the hell probation he was on, saying you can't incite the public anymore. It wasn't inciting the public. You can go and watch the live stream. He's basically just, reporting on the case, and then he gets rolled up on by the cops and taken away. And the craziest thing, before the freaking Muslim rape gang trial that he was reporting on is even over, he's literally in jail, right? No jury, and the sentence is directly the edict of the magistrate, right? Oh, God bless democracy in the grand old United Kingdom. What a joke. It's too offensive to, even mention, the crimes committed by, Muslim rape gang UK, but even reporting on it gets you in jail for 13 months, right? With no jury of your peers. That's astounding, right? I mean, first it was the Alfie Evans thing, and it's like there's been a lot of tension between the U.S. and the U.K. lately. Perhaps that because people in the West, whether it's Canada, the United States, Western Europe, or the UK are finding kind of a new common ground, right? There's sort of a new libertarian conservatism resurgence, right? You got a lot of the original libertarians, Adam Kokesh, Jeffrey Tucker, excuse me, what's his name, Larkin Rose, right? These guys were heavy hitters, not only a few years ago, right? You know, basically just spreading the gospel of anarchy and libertarianism, and now they're just like almost a bunch of wailing liberals now. Like, you know, they probably don't think that their position has changed, and perhaps it hasn't, but a position that doesn't change in response to new inputs and new situations isn't a practical position, it's an ideology. Oh, some aloe and pineapple juice, Space Panther made with the juicer, good stuff. It's getting hot out here, but with more heat comes more energy, comes more activity, comes more evolution. That's good. Not drinking for the month of June, just getting straight, getting, you know, clear before Baby Thunder Slice manifests on this plane, goes Earthside the beginning of next month, knock on wood. Everything's gonna be good. We're aiming for a home birth here at home, right? Got the cloud buster over here, right? So it's like, you know, right there. And so it's like this baby's gonna be born inside of an orgone vortex. Like I don't know if how many babies have ever been born in this proximity to a cloudbuster device, right? And you know, again, people think I'm crazy for doing this stuff, but I'll tell you what, my life is a lot better as a result of me doing this crazy stuff, right? You might try and analyze it objectively and say, oh, my scientific worldview says that he's crazy because it can't happen, therefore it doesn't happen. I just, you know, categorically, you know, declare reality to be so without any experimentation, right? That's the position of these, you know, atheist skeptics, right? That just are usually Einsteinian fanboys, right? Who don't believe in any sort of energy, right? They lump it all in with religion. And, you know, I know how they think because I used to think the same way. And I just listened to Jordan Peterson make the most succinct, perfect, rational explanation for religion and its utility in society that has really very little to do with objectively proving the existence of God. It's about the ethics and the morality and the way we treat each other when we assume that we are children of God and that we are all being watched and we are all being judged and the truth will eventually come to light, right? It is not a given in any sense of the word to assume that people will have this sort of morality and respect for others and general cohesion in society if we just absolutely rip out that element of religion. The atheists posit that, you know, morality is inherent to the human, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but like any instinct, it's either cultivated or it's suppressed, right? We have genes that can be activated or deactivated based on the methylation outside the, you know, DNA code, but that's a little complex, but true, it's the cause of a lot of, you know, good health and bad health for people is their ability to methylate and, you know, activate and deactivate codons in the genetic sequence, right? Same thing with, right, these psychological phenomena. They can be accentuated, they can be repressed. And we could argue quite articulately, Jordan Peterson sure does, that, you know, the morality that Western culture is based on that allowed capitalism to even flourish in the first place is the result of the cultivation of these, you know, not even necessarily altruistic virtues. They're just respect for your neighbor, right? The golden rule at the core of the whole thing. Even if there are superstitious aspects, the sheer cultivation of that virtue of people not stealing from each other and not killing from each other and respecting their parents, right? And like not worshiping false idols, you know, all of these things actually objectively make society a better place and a nicer place to live in, right? It's better not to be robbed. It's better not to be violently killed, I'm pretty sure. And one of the one of the reasons capitalism doesn't flourish in places like, the Muslim world or sub-Saharan Africa, right, is because they haven't yet established that sort of, cultural morality, right? Islam and Christianity are not equivalent, right? And before Islam, there was even worse, like warlords and tribal fighting, right? The tribal fighting in Europe too, for sure, but that's the point, is that there are objective differences between the belief structures, and those have led to differential outcomes in a human population. Then until we learn to respect each other, as fellow children of God, to use that phrase, there's really no potential for a liberal market to even emerge, right? And, ideology isn't helpful, but there's a simple, basic morality to the Judeo-Christian ethic that Jordan Peterson talks about. And I don't know, man, we got to play it as it lays. You can abstractify everything into this mental, ivory tower up here, right? And just separate yourself from all the real world consequences. Or you can actually basically be intellectually honest and, have the courage to interact with the world and to see things that you don't necessarily already have an answer for. I want to give a shout out to YouTube channel Radical Capitalist, Chase Rachels. Guy's holding it down. And this is what I'm talking about, the evolution of ideas to suit reality, not just ignoring reality to suit the preconceived ideas. Chase went and debated Larkin Rose and Jeffrey Tucker and Adam Kokesh on the subject of immigration, right? The anarchist position on immigration, basically with those three guys all maintaining open borders for the sake of anarchist ideology, and Chase basically saying that the public resources, right, are the roads and the public infrastructure is not public. It's diffusely owned by the taxpayers who paid for it. They have a greater claim to those assets than, say, for example, an illegal immigrant, an undocumented immigrant coming into the country and laying a claim to resources, or hordes of them coming in and basically saying, like, we have a right to this welfare scheme, we have a right to use these roads, etc. We have a right to use these hospitals, and I'm not necessarily saying that all illegal immigrants should be prevented from using any of those things, but the anarchist ideology that Larkin and Adam and Jeffrey are espousing doesn't acknowledge of any real collective action by individuals to govern themselves and secure territory. And that's not a realistic position if you know literally anything about history, which is funny because Jeffrey Tucker pretends like he knows literally everything about history, the most overbearing, haughty libertarian in the sphere today, for sure. You got to understand that it's not just about fighting the government. It's not about just rebelling against the state. It's about how do you replace it. You don't have to fight the government. You just have to make it obsolete, right? That's all you got to do. And then the question is, how do we achieve effective governance in the absence of a centralized, top-down, patriarchal, violent structure? And the answer is contract law, right? It's allowing individuals to form their own contractual associations, right? Voluntary hierarchies, voluntary securing of territory on a collective basis, right? Again, you saw last video, I'm Scotch-Irish, right? Is like, and of course all of Europe, there's castles, right? And even in, the ancient world, you find these huge cities built on top of giant rocks, right? That are defensible positions. It's totally unrealistic to say that for the sake of anarchist ideology, unrestricted immigration is like the default moral position. It's not clear at all that that's the case. People, they want to make it simple. They want to sort it into this or that, right? And it makes it a lot easier for people when they can do that, because they don't have to actually genuinely think things out. They don't have to actually confront themselves, you know. They don't have to fight the real fight against one's own false ego, right? They're searching to destroy the external dragon, perpetually seeking external enemies to conquer. And that's also why I haven't been making too many videos, because I get in that habit too. When I'm trying to make a video, you know, there's a lot of things that trigger me, get me fired up, you know, basically, and I feel like I have to respond to everything in a sense, but, you know, I don't have to broadcast everything to the world, right? Space Panther, and I can have those discussions, but I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be just stirring shit for the sake of views, right, to appease people. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to basically be not binary, but trinary, right, in a sense of there's a balance, there's a ground, right? It's not just red versus blue, black versus white. There's a purple, right? there's a gray, right? And electrically, there's a ground, right? There's not just positive and negative. Everything in this universe is electric, right? And it's all moving through the ether. It's interesting because, you know, another way that people oversimplify the world is through materialism, right? We can't comprehend the significance for ourselves of there being a spiritual plane, right? A dream world, right? Some metaphysical plane that is not here in the material. That scares people because they can't control it. And if they don't have a biologically cultivated relationship with that sort of unknown, right, they will seek to basically eliminate it because they never became comfortable with it, right? It's like a person, you know, basically who just, you know, and, yeah, I don't even know what a proper metaphor is. Like somebody who grew up and doesn't like tomatoes, and you know, basically instead of learning that, hey, tomatoes are a part of life and maybe tomatoes aren't so bad at some point, they basically say that everyone who eats tomatoes is an evil person and should be, you know, excised from the planet. It's like, you know, part of life and learning how to really fulfill the psyche to become a full human being is learning how to adapt and learning how to contend, right? You got to learn how to fight, but you got to know that what doesn't bend will break, right? And that applies to fighting, is that the best way to get your way is to be flexible, right? And it is to understand how to give your opponent what he wants, what she wants, while at the same time allowing that transaction to get you what you want, right? It's win-win. That's the way that the universe normally works, right? Even in a sort of like, you know, seemingly predator-prey situation in the food chain in nature, right? There's a contract there. There's a unwritten energetic contract in all of nature, right? This is a great economy. There's billions and trillions of transactions happening in my backyard. The bacteria, fungi, the plants, the sun, right? And of course the sun, the great anode, right? Sending electrical force, rippling it out through the ether in a wave to all the different planets. And all the different planets are basically got their own field between them. And of course, you know, you could say that the chakras inside of the body are correlates of the planets and those planetary energies. As above, so below. There's this great drama happening inside of every human, inside of every conscious living being, and then there's a great drama in heavens, right? You know, listening to Joe Rogan argue with Candace Owens about climate change, right? Now, you know, Joe Rogan's got a lot of you know, pretty enlightened viewpoints on a lot of things. He's obviously taken a lot of mushrooms and some acid, figured out some things about consciousness and whatnot. But, you know, it's funny because he accepts the global warming dogma and a program, hook, line, and sinker, no question. Oh, 97% of scientists, 97% of scientists. Contrived political bullshit, total intellectual fraud. Science is never settled. It is a continually moving target, and it's continually evolving in response to new information, right? Listen to a lot more of the electric universe, guys, right? The structure of the universe is totally electric, and really pondering the consequences of planetary formation in an electric universe, right? Of which they say that rocky planets are, well, let's start with, you know, stars are basically born like beads on a string. these light like Christmas lights, right? There's this great web across the whole universe, right? And I'm gonna actually do like a whiteboard video, just show my kind of like worldview on this in a visual form. But basically, there's a great positive and a great negative, and in between that, there's a whole lot of webbing, right, of the living structure that is the universe, right? Like mycelium in the soil, like mushrooms. And all these stars are basically being born along these energetic, cords. And it's all spiraling, right? And basically, gas giant planets are ejected from stars during moments of electrical stress, that as the star evolves and takes in more and more energy and cultivates, basically, we found every known element in the solar wind, right? The sun is producing every known element inside of itself, right? And instead of a ball of fusion, it's actually a ball of liquid metallic hydrogen, and it is part of a great electrical circuit. And it's shooting out hydrogen ions, right, protons, and that's interacting with hydroxide ions locked inside of the rocky bodies of the planets. It's creating water throughout the universe, right? Throughout the solar system, there's water being created, right? So if water is what's needed for life, and water is what's created ubiquitously throughout the solar system from stars interacting with rocky planets, you have the potential for life anywhere that, there's a stable enough system and enough electrical coherence and complexity to the planet to cultivate that energy and not have it ripped away totally by ambient environments like Mars, right? It's funny, like Mercury and Callisto, which is a moon of Jupiter, are within 100 miles, 100 kilometers of diameter of each other. They're almost identical in size. So, what is it that put the planets where they are? Why is the asteroid belt there? Is it really rational to assume that this solar system evolved exactly as it is, in stratums and belts, that it was all just a cloud and the planets formed exactly where they are? Why should we assume that? Why should we assume that at all? When the whole history of our species, our ancestors, were following the night sky, were following the stars, had built an entire philosophy on the stars, had this whole mythology representing the heavens and the planets and the stars, right? And basically this planetary war of the gods, right? Why should we assume that that's all just a bunch of bullshit, and that the solar system's always been the way it is, and that all the races of humankind, basically, there's no difference. The genders, there's no difference. It's all just a social construct. Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. We've had different collective factors, and I'll break it down right now. The difference in IQ between pale-skinned people and dark-skinned people is because of the weather. You got to be smarter to survive in the cold. You live in a cold place, it's almost like, why do I live here? It doesn't make any sense. But when it's warm, there's fruit growing, right? You could just fall asleep on the beach and there's just coconuts everywhere. It's like, you don't have to think that hard to live in a tropical environment. And there's nothing bad about that, right? You could argue that because of how easy it is for us to live in the tropics, right? But when the climate shifts catastrophically, shall we say, what if, maybe at one time, we were, one sort of group, maybe still separated by other factors, but, we were all eating, a frugivore diet like we're biologically designed to, and then, some sort of climate catastrophe happens, right? Going with Velikovsky, right? Venus comes in, which is actually a comet, and basically, it changes the whole solar system. Who knows, right? Just going with the possibility, because we know, again, from the archaeological record, that there have been these catastrophes. And the swings in climate were fairly massive up until about 10 to 12,000 years ago, in which it got locked into a fairly stable pattern. And even you zoom into that pattern, and there's all these ups and downs, again, proving that, climate change is a natural thing that, right? It's easier to live in a warm environment, and you got to be smarter to live in a cold environment, right? That happened outside of our will. People responded in different ways, right? They were living in different parts of the world. They had to adapt, right? And, up north and where it's cold, right, white people had to get very, very clever in order to survive. The most clever was able to survive and, put their genetics forward. And, there wasn't necessarily that same evolutionary pressure in, more equatorial environments. but nothing in that, you know, like Jordan Peterson's talking about, intelligence does not correlate to morality or human value, right? And that's what I said in my video, you know, maybe 6 months ago, after the Hidden History of Humanity videos, right, parts 1 and 2, of which I'm going to be doing part 3 here soon enough, but got to really think it out. It's a huge topic, right? But, you know, we all have some very important role to play on this planet, and IQ is not the ultimate determinant of human value. And, you know, it's not really going to help anybody to force equality of outcome, right? Again, Asians are, you know, statistically higher than whites in IQ. Am I upset about that? Am I like, oh, you're saying that I'm not as good as an Asian? It's like, no, I'm glad that they have that higher IQ. I can objectively say that it seems like, you know, the Asian psyche is better at certain things in life than, you know, perhaps my anarchist psyche, right? But we're all in it together and we're all benefiting each other, and we shouldn't try and all be the same, right? We should try and complement each other in our differences in a matter of mutual respect. And that's really it, you know, basically, yeah. Much love to everybody out there, regardless of what their skin color is or whatnot, because, you know, for me, we're all united in one common story, right? And that's not like a racist thing to perceive and to say, right? The radical communist leftists who have basically tried to cleave society into this binary system, right? They don't get it. They just don't get it. They don't get gender. They don't get race. They don't get anything. They don't understand how money works. But for some reason, they feel compelled to basically compel everyone into a tyranny, right? They want to eliminate freedom of speech. They want to eliminate property rights. They want to eliminate firearm rights, right? They're all about reproductive rights, whatever that means. Still haven't figured out what reproductive rights is. But anyway, it's just crazy, you know. Much love to everybody. Just checking in. Let me know if you got any comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.